The Mafia boss who'd ended 23 lives couldn't survive 3 days of his children's silence. Sang-won Kim had always believed in absolutes, loyalty or exile, obedience or blood. But nothing in his code prepared him for the sound of his sons forgetting how to breathe. It started 72 hours ago, the night he threw Geraldine Cromer into the rain. She'd stood in his foyer with her spine straight and her chin up, even as the accusation hung in the air like smoke. The ancestral jade phoenix, worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, had been found tucked inside her pillowcase, wrapped in one of the twins' superhero blankets, no less. The evidence was damning. The decision was easy, or so he thought. Geraldine hadn't begged. That's what haunted him most. She'd looked at him with those dark eyes that had watched his sons grow from toddlers who could barely speak to boys who laughed in 2 languages and said only 3 words. "You're wrong," sang one. Then his sons appeared at the top of the staircase. Jiho and Minho didn't cry like normal children. They screamed like something was being ripped from inside their chests. They threw themselves down the steps with such abandon that Sang-won's guards moved instinctively to catch them. But the boys didn't want catching. They wanted her. They collided with Geraldine's legs, their small fists grabbing handfuls of her dress, their faces pressed against her hips. The sound they made wasn't crying. It was keening. The kind of sound that comes from the part of the soul that understands loss before the brain does. "Mama Ji, please," Jiho gasped in English, his breath coming in sharp, broken bursts. "Don't leave us. We need you." Minho couldn't speak at all. He just held on tighter, his whole body shaking. Geraldine's hands hovered over their heads for a moment. She wanted to comfort them one last time. Sang-won could see it in the way her fingers trembled, but she didn't touch them. Instead, she knelt down, eye level with the boys, and did something that made Sang-won's chest tighten. She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone trying to be brave for the people she loved. Her hands cupped their wet cheeks, thumbs brushing away tears that wouldn't stop falling. "You listen to me," she whispered, her voice steady despite everything. "You are strong, you are kind, and no matter what anyone says, you are loved. Do you hear me?" They nodded, clinging to her words like lifelines. Then the guards pulled her away. The doors closed. The crying stopped. That's when the silence began. For 3 days, Jiho and Minho didn't speak. They didn't eat. They didn't fight or play or ask questions. They simply sat in their room, staring at the wall where Geraldine used to hang their drawings. By the second night, both boys were burning with fever. By the third morning, Sang-won was standing in their doorway at 3 a.m., watching them sleep, and realizing something terrifying. He'd made a mistake. But not the mistake he thought. Geraldine Cromer arrived in Seoul with a one-way ticket and a secret she'd sworn never to tell. The humidity hit her first, thick and suffocating as she stepped off the plane at Incheon. August in Korea felt like breathing through wet cotton. She pulled her suitcase, the same brown leather one she'd carry out of the Kim estate 3 years later, and told herself this was temporary, just long enough to disappear, just long enough for Atlanta to forget her face. She'd left behind her master's degree in early childhood development, her mother's questions, and a courthouse that still had her testimony on file. The trial had ended 6 months ago. The man she'd testified against, a powerful school administrator who'd been embezzling funds meant for at-risk children, had walked free. 2 weeks later, someone broke into her apartment. They didn't take anything. They just left a message on her bathroom mirror, written in red lipstick. "Witnesses don't live long." So Geraldine ran. The agency that placed her with the Kim family asked few questions. Private household. 2 young children. Father recently widowed. Needs someone with educational background and flexibility. Room and board included. She didn't ask what kind of business Mr. Kim ran. She didn't want to know. The estate sat in Seongbuk-dong, perched on a hillside like a fortress pretending to be a home, all glass and sharp angles, with gardens so pristine they looked painted. The kind of place where even the air felt expensive. Sang-won Kim met her at the door himself. He was younger than she expected, maybe 35, with the kind of face that could sell luxury watches or terrify grown men, depending on the angle. The dragon tattoo crawling up his neck should have been a warning. So should the way his security team materialized from nowhere, watching her with eyes that had seen things she didn't want to imagine. But Geraldine was good at ignoring warnings. "Miss Cromer." His English was perfect, barely touched by accent. The agency says you have a degree from Emory. Yes, sir. Child psychology and early education. The boys are 3, twins. They've had 4 nannies in 2 months. His voice carried no emotion, just fact. My wife passed suddenly. They don't sleep through the night. They barely speak. Can you fix that? Geraldine met his eyes cold, measuring and saw something beneath the ice. Desperation, maybe. Or exhaustion so deep it had turned into stone. I can't fix grief, Mr. Kim. But I can help them learn to carry it. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close enough. You start tomorrow. My assistant will show you to your quarters. One rule. The West Wing is private. You stay in the East. Understood? Understood. She should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why the house had guards at every entrance. Why the windows were bulletproof. Why she'd spotted at least 3 weapons holstered on the men who walked the perimeter. But she didn't. Because that night, when she finally met Ji-ho and Min-ho, nothing else mattered. They were tiny things, all dark eyes and serious faces. They sat on their bedroom floor, building block towers in absolute silence. No laughter, no chatter, just the soft click of wood against wood. Geraldine sat down beside them, didn't speak, didn't force interaction, just picked up a block and added it to Ji-ho's tower. The boy looked at her, startled. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, he said one word in Korean. Min-ho translated, his voice barely a whisper. He says your hands are pretty, like Mama's. Geraldine's throat closed. She looked at her own hands, dark skin, short nails, a small scar on her thumb from a childhood accident, and saw them through these boys' eyes. Not foreign, not different, just familiar in the way that mattered. What color should we use next? She asked softly. Min-ho handed her a red block. Ji-ho smiled. It was the smallest thing. A smile that lasted maybe 2 seconds. But in that moment, Geraldine forgot about Atlanta. Forgot about running. Forgot about everything except the feeling of being needed again. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just found the thing she'd been running toward her whole life. She also didn't know that in 3 years, these same boys would scream her name as she was dragged from their home. Or that their father, the man currently watching her from the doorway with unreadable eyes, would become the person she'd learned to love and lose in the same breath. 6 months into her time at the Kim estate, Geraldine realized 3 things. First, Ji-ho talked in his sleep. Not nightmares, but full conversations with his mother, asking her questions about school and whether heaven had playgrounds. She started recording these sleep talks on her phone, then playing them back for him in the morning so he could remember. He began to smile more after that. Second, Min-ho was left-handed, but someone had been forcing him to use his right. His drawings were cramped, frustrated things, until she handed him a blue marker and said, "Use whichever hand feels right." The first picture he drew left-handed was of her, standing between him and his brother, all 3 of them holding hands under a huge yellow sun. Third, Sang-won Kim was always watching, not in a threatening way, more like a man trying to understand a language he'd never learned. He'd appear in doorways while she was teaching the boys English, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He'd pass through the kitchen while she made them breakfast, nothing fancy, just eggs and toast shaped like bears, and pause just long enough to watch Ji-ho laugh at the butternose. He never spoke during these moments, never interrupted, but Geraldine could feel his attention like heat. The first time they had a real conversation was 10 months in, on a night when Min-ho spiked a fever of 103. Geraldine had the boy in her arms, pressing cool cloths to his forehead while Ji-ho sobbed in his bed, terrified his brother was dying like their mother had. The family doctor had come and gone, leaving antibiotics and reassurance, but Min-ho wouldn't settle. He kept crying for Mama, and every time he said it, something in the house seemed to break a little more. Sang-won appeared at 2 a.m. He wore a simple black t-shirt and sleep pants, the most casual she'd ever seen him. The dragon on his neck looked different in the dim nursery light, less threatening, almost protective. "How is he?" His voice was rough, like he'd been awake for days. "Fever's not breaking yet. The medicine needs time." Geraldine adjusted Min-ho in her lap, the boy's head heavy against her shoulder. "He's asking for your wife." Sang-won's jaw tightened. He moved to Ji-ho's bed, sitting on the edge, his large hand swallowing his son's small one. "It's okay to be scared," he murmured in Korean, then English, making sure both Geraldine and Jiho understood. Your brother is strong. Like you. Like your mother was. Was Mama sick like this? Jiho asked, his voice breaking. Sang-won hesitated. Geraldine saw the war in his eyes, how much truth to give, how much to protect them from. Your mother's body stopped working the way it should, he said finally. But it wasn't the flu. It wasn't something you can catch. And it wasn't anyone's fault. Not even yours? Jiho's question was so quiet, so loaded with a child's attempt to understand adult pain. Sang-won flinched. Just a tiny movement, but Geraldine caught it. Not even mine, he whispered, but the way he said it made Geraldine wonder if he believed it. Minho whimpered in her arms, and without thinking, Geraldine started humming. An old gospel song her grandmother used to sing, something about troubled waters and being carried home. She wasn't religious anymore. Atlanta had beaten that out of her, but the melody came back like muscle memory. Sang-won's head turned sharply. That song? He said. My wife used to play something similar. On the piano, in the West Wing. The boys haven't heard music since she died. I can stop. No. His voice was raw. Don't stop. So she didn't. She hummed through the whole song, while Minho's breathing finally evened out, while Jiho's grip on his father's hand loosened into sleep. When the last note faded, the room held a silence that wasn't empty. It was full of something neither of them could name. Thank you, Sang-won said, for staying, for caring about them. They're easy to care about. Most people see them as obligations, complications to my business. He chose the word carefully. You see them as people. They are people. Small ones who've lost too much too fast. Sang-won studied her in the half-light, his dark eyes searching for something. You're different from the others. The nannies before you saw this job as a paycheck. You see it as a calling. Geraldine looked down at Minho, his small body finally relaxed against her. I needed them as much as they needed me. She didn't elaborate, didn't tell him about Atlanta, or the man who'd threatened her, or the way she still woke up sometimes, checking the locks twice. But Sang-won seemed to understand anyway. We're all running from something, he said quietly. The trick is finding something worth running toward. Their eyes met, held. For the first time, Geraldine saw past the Mafia boss, past the tattoos and the danger that clung to him like cologne. She saw a father who was drowning in grief, trying to keep his sons afloat even as his own lungs filled with water. And he saw her, really saw her. Not the nanny, not the help, but Geraldine, a woman who'd crossed an ocean to escape her past and accidentally stumbled into a purpose. The moment stretched. Neither of them looked away. Then Minho coughed, and the spell broke. Sang-won stood, running a hand through his hair. I'll have one of the men bring you coffee. You should rest. I'm staying here tonight. Just in case. He nodded. At the door, he paused. Geraldine? It was the first time he'd used her first name. Yes, the West Wing piano. It hasn't been touched since my wife died, but if you wanted to play it, for the boys, you have my permission. It wasn't just permission, it was trust. An invitation into the part of his home he kept locked away. I'd like that, she said. After he left, Geraldine sat in the dark nursery, Minho sleeping against her chest, and realized something terrifying. She was starting to feel like this was home. These boys weren't just her job anymore. They were hers in all the ways that mattered. And Sang-won Kim, with his dangerous eyes and dragon tattoo and hands that held his son so gently, he was starting to feel like something she couldn't afford to name. Not yet, maybe not ever, but the feeling was there, growing in the dark like something forbidden, something inevitable. The first nanny lasted 47 minutes. She was a middle-aged woman from Busan, highly recommended, with 20 years of experience raising children of distinguished families. She wore a crisp uniform and carried references from 3 diplomats. The twins destroyed her. Jiho locked himself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out. Minho threw a ceramic vase, a Ming Dynasty piece worth more than a car, across the living room. It shattered against the wall exactly where the nanny's head had been moments before. Where is Mama G? Jiho screamed from behind the locked door, his voice going hoarse. Bring her back. The nanny quit before Sang-won could even offer her hazard pay. The second nanny was younger, supposedly good with difficult children. She brought toys and games and patience. The twins looked at her with eyes that had gone empty. then simply walked away. They went to their room, locked the door, and refused to eat for 18 hours. Sang-won found himself standing outside their door at midnight, his forehead pressed against the wood. "Boys, please, you need to eat something." Silence. "She's not coming back." Hee-sun's voice cut through the dark hallway. His fiancée emerged from the master suite wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than Geraldine's entire year's salary. "You need to help them accept that. Children adapt. They always do." Sang-won looked at her. Really looked. When had her eyes become so cold? When had her voice started carrying that edge of satisfaction whenever the boys suffered? "They're grieving," he said. "They're manipulating you. This is what children do when they don't get their way." Hee-sun moved closer, her hand trailing up his arm. "Once they realize the American woman is truly gone, they'll settle. Trust me." But they didn't settle. By day 2, both boys had stopped speaking entirely. They sat in their room like small ghosts, their skin taking on a grayish tint that made the family doctor frown with concern. "Their vitals are acceptable," Dr. Park said, closing his medical bag. "But I'm worried about their mental state. They're showing signs of severe attachment trauma. In children this young, losing a primary caregiver can have lasting effects." "She wasn't their mother," Sang-won said, the words tasting wrong in his mouth. "No, but she was the person who held them together after their mother died. To them, you've now taken away both of the women who made them feel safe." "Doctor." Park's expression was grave. "I've seen this before in children of families like yours. The emotional withdrawal can be a precursor to something more serious. If they don't improve in the next 24 hours, I'd recommend psychiatric intervention." After the doctor left, Sang-won walked through his house like a stranger. Every corner held memories of Geraldine. The kitchen where she'd made the boys breakfast, shaping toast into animals. The playroom where her laughter had echoed as she chased them in elaborate games of pretend. The piano in the West Wing, his late wife's piano, where she'd started teaching them simple melodies. Her dark fingers showing them where to place their smaller ones. The house had become a mausoleum. He ended up in the twins' room at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, driven by a father's instinct that something was terribly wrong. Ji-ho and Min-ho lay in their beds, their breathing shallow, their faces flushed with fever that had spiked again despite the medicine. Sang-won sat between their beds, helpless. He'd built an empire. He'd survived assassination attempts, hostile takeovers, betrayals that would have killed weaker men. He'd looked death in the face 23 times and never flinched. But watching his son slip away from him, degree by degree, breath by breath, this was the thing that finally broke him. "I'm sorry," he whispered in Korean, then English. "I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I thought she'd betrayed us." Neither boy responded. They didn't even open their eyes. Sang-won reached out, touching Min-ho's forehead, burning. He moved to Ji-ho, the same. Both children were on fire from the inside out, their small bodies fighting a battle that had nothing to do with illness, and everything to do with a broken heart. His hand brushed against something under Ji-ho's pillow. A small plastic object, cool to the touch. He pulled it out. A blue robot. One of those educational toys that teaches languages through repetition. Geraldine had bought it for them months ago, encouraging them to practice their English pronunciation by recording themselves and playing it back. Sang-won's thumb found the button marked play. Static. Then Geraldine's voice, warm and gentle. "Repeat after me. I am brave. I am kind. I am loved." The twins' voices followed, practicing, laughing, happy. Sang-won almost turned it off. The sound was a knife to the chest, a reminder of what he'd thrown away. But then the recording continued, and he realized the robot had been left on, had kept recording long after the English lesson ended. The sound of a door opening. Footsteps. Adult footsteps, but not Geraldine's. Hers had been soft, careful. These clicked. Heels. "Stupid brats." Hee-sun's voice, crystal clear on the recording. Clinging to that woman like she's their real mother. Pathetic. The sound of drawers opening, rustling fabric. Then Hee-sun again, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "This should do it." The jade wrapped in their precious blanket, hidden in her room. Sang-won will finally see what everyone else has known for months. The American is just after his money. Once she's gone, I'll ship these two off to boarding school in Switzerland, maybe London, somewhere far enough that they won't come crying home every holiday. More footsteps, the door closing, then silence, except for the distant sound of the twins playing in another room, unaware that their world was about to end. The recording stopped. Sang-won sat frozen, the robot clutched in his hand. The room spun, his chest constricted. He'd prided himself on reading people, on seeing through lies and manipulation. That skill had kept him alive in a world where trust was currency and betrayal was death. But he'd been blind. Completely, catastrophically blind. Hee-sun had framed Geraldine, had planted evidence, destroyed an innocent woman's reputation, and separated his sons from the only person who'd made them feel whole again, all so she could have access to his wealth and get rid of the inconvenient children. And he'd believed it. He'd thrown Geraldine out into the rain without question, without even a moment of doubt. The monster in this story wasn't the woman with kind eyes who'd sung his sons to sleep. It was the one sleeping in his bed, wearing his late wife's jewelry, planning to erase his children from their own home. Sang-won looked at his sons, pale, silent, slipping away from him, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear, not for himself, for them. Because if he didn't fix this, if he didn't find Geraldine and bring her back, he was going to lose the only family he had left. He stood, the blue robot still clutched in his hand, and walked to the master suite. Hee-sun was asleep, peaceful, one arm draped elegantly over the silk sheets. She looked like innocence itself. Sang-won stood over her bed and pressed play on the robot. Her own voice filled the room. Stupid brats. I'll ship these two off to boarding school. Hee-sun's eyes snapped open. For one moment, pure panic flashed across her perfect face. Then she tried to smile, to play it off. Darling, you startled me. What are you? Get out. The words were quiet, deadly. Sang-won, please, let me explain. You have 10 minutes to pack a bag and leave my house. If you're still here in 11 minutes, I will have you removed. If you ever contact me or my sons again, I will destroy everything you love. Your father's shipping company, your mother's reputation, your name, all of it, gone. You can't. Sang-won leaned down, his face inches from hers. The dragon on his neck seemed to come alive in the dim light, a warning written in ink and skin. I am the Lion of Soul. You set fire to my den. You hurt my cubs. There is nothing I can't do to you. Hee-sun scrambled out of bed, grabbing clothes with shaking hands. She tried one more time. Those children don't even belong to you. Not really. They're just... Get out. She ran. Sang-won watched through the window as his guards escorted her to the gate. Watched as she stumbled in her expensive shoes. Watched as the iron doors closed behind her. Then he turned back to the nursery, to his sons who were still burning up with grief, and made a decision. He would find Geraldine Cromer. He would get on his knees if he had to. He would beg, plead, offer her anything she wanted, because the truth had finally become clear. She wasn't the help. She wasn't the nanny. She was the foundation upon which his broken family stood, and he'd shattered her. Now he had to pray she'd let him put the pieces back together. The call came at 3:47 a.m. We found her, sir. Port of Incheon. She's booked on a cargo freighter leaving at dawn. We have maybe 90 minutes. Sang-won didn't bother changing out of the t-shirt and sweatpants he'd thrown on. Didn't grab a jacket. Didn't tell his sons where he was going. They were finally asleep. The fever medication doing its work. Their small bodies exhausted from days of fighting. He just ran. The convoy of SUVs tore through Seoul's empty streets, their headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. His driver, a man who'd been with him for 15 years, who'd driven through gang wars and police raids without flinching, looked nervous. Sir, we're approaching 150 kilometers per hour. If we're stopped, then we pay the fine. Drive faster. They drove faster. Sang-won's mind wouldn't stop replaying the recording. Hee-sun's voice, so casual in its cruelty. The sound of her planting evidence. The complete absence of guilt as she plotted to send his sons away like unwanted furniture. How had he missed it? How had he looked at Geraldine, a woman who'd spent 3 years pouring love into his children, asking for nothing in return and believed she was capable of theft? The answer sat heavy in his chest, because believing in goodness was dangerous in his world. Trust was a weakness. Love was a liability. He'd spent so long armoring himself against betrayal that he'd become incapable of recognizing loyalty when it was standing right in front of him. The port appeared on the horizon, all industrial lights and massive cranes moving cargo containers like children's blocks. The freighter was a hulking beast of rust and steel, its horn bellowing into the morning air. The gangplank was still down, but workers were preparing to raise it. There, one of his men pointed. Sangwon saw her. Even at this distance, even in the weak light, he knew that silhouette. Geraldine stood at the base of the gangplank, her worn suitcase at her feet. She wore jeans and a simple jacket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked small against the massive ship, small and alone, and preparing to leave his country forever. The SUVs screeched to a halt. Sangwon was out before they'd fully stopped, his bare feet hitting the cold pavement. Geraldine! She turned. For a moment, her face showed nothing, no anger, no relief, no emotion at all, just exhaustion, the kind that goes bone deep. Then he saw her shoulders tense, saw her take a step back, and realized with horror that she was afraid. Of him. The man she'd trusted with 3 years of her life now looked like a threat. He stopped running, stopped 10 feet away, hands visible, no sudden movements, the way you approach something wounded. I need to talk to you, he said, breathing hard. Please, just 5 minutes. I have nothing to say to you. Her voice was flat, dead. You made your decision, Sangwon. You threw me away. Now let me leave with what's left of my dignity. I was wrong. Those are just words. The jade He-sun planted it. I have proof. A recording. She framed you because she wanted to get rid of the boys, wanted to send them away so she could have my money without the inconvenience of children. The words tumbled out, desperate, raw. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known. Geraldine's expression didn't change. You should have. But you didn't. That tells me everything I need to know about what I actually meant to you. You meant everything. I meant nothing. The words exploded from her, 3 days of pain finally finding voice. I was the help, Sangwon. Always the help. You looked me in the eye and threw me out based on zero evidence, because to you, I was replaceable. Those boys, they were my heart. I would have died for them, but you saw me as hired staff who'd stolen from you, and you didn't even question it. I know. You're right. Do you know what the worst part was? Tears were streaming down her face now, angry tears that she wiped away furiously. It wasn't the accusation. It wasn't even losing my job. It was watching those babies scream for me while you did nothing. It was knowing they would think I abandoned them, that they would grow up believing I chose to leave. Sangwon felt something break inside his chest. They're sick, he whispered. Both of them. They haven't eaten in 3 days. They don't speak. They're slipping away, Geraldine. I don't know how to reach them. He saw it, the flash of panic in her eyes, the way her hand moved instinctively toward the car, ready to rush to the boys. But then, she caught herself, and the walls went back up. Hire a good child psychologist. I'm sure you can afford the best. They don't need a psychologist. They need you. They needed me 3 days ago. They needed me when I was begging you to listen, to trust me, to see that I loved them. But you were too busy believing the worst of me to notice. The ship's horn blew again. Final warning. Geraldine grabbed her suitcase. Wait, Sangwon said. Please. What can I do? What do you need me to say? She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw something other than anger in her eyes. Pain. Deep, soul-crushing pain. I need you to let me go, she said quietly. I need you to let me get on that ship and start over somewhere new. Because staying here, in this city, knowing those boys are so close but not mine anymore, it would destroy me. They are yours. They've always been yours. I was just too blind to see it. Behind them, car doors opened. Small feet hit the pavement. Sangwon turned, shocked he'd left the twins sleeping, had told his house staff to watch them. But Jiho and Minho stood there in their pajamas, looking impossibly small and fragile in the industrial port light. One of his guards must have buckled and brought them. The man looked terrified, but Sangwon couldn't even be angry. The boys saw Geraldine and ran. Mama G. They crashed into her with the force of small missiles, wrapping around her legs, her waist, anywhere they could reach. The suitcase fell. Forgotten. Geraldine dropped to her knees, and the sound she made was something between a sob and a prayer. "I'm sorry," Jiho gasped in English. "Please don't go. Please. We'll be better. We promise." "You were perfect," Geraldine whispered, holding them so tight it must have hurt. "You were always perfect. This wasn't your fault." Minho looked up at her with fever-bright eyes. "Daddy said you didn't steal." "He said someone lied." "Did someone lie, Mama G?" "Yes, baby. Someone lied." "Then why are you leaving?" It was the simplest question. The most devastating question. Geraldine looked past the boys to Sang-won, and he saw the choice playing out in her eyes. The easy path. Get on the ship. Leave the pain behind. Start fresh. The hard path. Stay. Risk her heart again. Trust the man who'd already proven he didn't deserve it. Because sometimes, she said carefully, when people hurt us, we need space to heal. But we need you to heal, Jiho said, his voice breaking. We can't do it without you. Sang-won stepped forward slowly, carefully. I can't do it without you either, he said. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I broke something that might be impossible to fix, but I'm asking anyway. Not as your employer. Not as the man who was too blind to see what was right in front of him. Just as someone who realized too late that you were never the help, Geraldine. You were the heart of my home. You still are. The ship's horn blew one last time. The gangplank started to rise. Geraldine looked at the ship, at the boys, at Sang-won. Then she picked up her suitcase and walked. She walked past him. For one terrible moment, Sang-won thought she was still heading for the ship, and his heart stopped completely. But then she moved toward the SUVs, the twins still clinging to her hands, and he understood. She was coming back. But on her terms. The drive to the estate was silent except for the boys' occasional sniffles. They'd climbed into Geraldine's lap the moment she got in the car, refusing to let go. She held them like someone who'd been drowning and just found air, her face pressed against their hair, breathing them in. Sang-won sat across from her, watching, learning, memorizing the way her fingers traced gentle circles on Minho's back, the way she kissed the top of Jiho's head every few minutes like she needed to confirm he was real. This was love. Pure, uncomplicated, given freely without expectation of return. He'd spent 40 years not recognizing it. When they arrived at the estate, dawn was breaking. The house staff had been roused, and Mrs. Park, the head of household who'd been quietly furious with Sang-won for 3 days, actually smiled when she saw Geraldine walk through the door. Welcome home, Miss Geraldine, the older woman said warmly. Thank you, Mrs. Park. Geraldine's voice was hoarse from crying. The boys led her upstairs, both talking over each other now, the silence of the past days completely forgotten. They wanted to show her the drawings they'd made, the pictures of her they'd hidden under their pillows. They needed her to check their homework, read them a story, make them toast with faces like she used to. Sang-won followed at a distance, giving her space. But when she reached the twins' room, she turned to face him. We need to talk, she said. After they're settled. He nodded. An hour later, after the boys had finally fallen asleep, real sleep this time, peaceful and deep, Geraldine found him in his study, the West Wing, the private section of the house she'd never been invited into until now. She didn't knock, just walked in and closed the door behind her. Sang-won stood from his desk. Would you like tea? Coffee? I can. Stop. She held up a hand. Just stop. We're going to have this conversation, and you're going to listen. Really listen. Can you do that? Yes. She paced, her movements sharp with leftover adrenaline. I came back for the boys. Only for the boys. Not for you. Not for this house. Not for the salary you pay me. I came back because those children deserve stability, and walking away from them felt like cutting out a piece of my soul. But I'm not staying as your employee, Sang-won. I'm done with that. I understand. I'll triple your. I don't want your money. The words echoed in the study. I never wanted your money. God, you really don't understand, do you? For 3 years, I've been raising your sons, teaching them, loving them, being the one who holds them when they're scared. I know Minho's allergic to shellfish, and Jiho has nightmares about car accidents. I know they prefer their sandwiches cut diagonally, and they sleep better with a nightlight shaped like a moon. I know them better than anyone, and you treated me like I was just another transaction in your life. Sang-won absorbed each word like a physical blow. What do you want from me? I want respect, she said fiercely. I want my name on their school records as an emergency contact. I want to be consulted when decisions are made about their education, their health, their future. I want to be treated like what I actually am, their parent in everything but biology. Not the nanny, not the help. Their mother. Done. I'm not finished. She stepped closer, and he could see the fire in her eyes. I want my own bank account that you can't freeze. I want autonomy. If I decide to leave, if I choose to walk away, I need to know I have the resources to do it. I never want to be trapped again. Of course. I'll arrange. And I want honesty, she continued, cutting through his words. Complete honesty. I know what you do, Sang-won. I'm not stupid. I know the business meetings you have at 3 a.m. aren't about legitimate trade. I know those men who guard the house aren't just security. I know you're involved in things that exist in shadows. And if I'm going to stay here, if I'm going to raise those boys in this house, I need you to stop pretending I'm too naive to understand. The silence that followed was thick, dangerous. Sang-won had built his entire empire on secrets, compartmentalization, never mixing his work with his home life. The West Wing was his office precisely because he could lock it, keep the darkness contained, protect his sons from the truth of what their father was. But Geraldine was asking him to tear down those walls. My work is dangerous, he said carefully. The less you know, the less I know, the more vulnerable I am. Knowledge is protection, Sang-won. If I understand the risks, I can prepare. I can keep the boys safe. But if you keep me in the dark and something happens... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. He saw the logic. Hated it. But saw it. All right, he said finally. Complete honesty. But in return, I need the same from you. She blinked. What? You came to Korea running from something. I've respected your privacy. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to be real with each other, I need to know what you're running from. Because if it catches up to you, it could affect my sons. Geraldine's expression shifted. Fear flickered across her face, quickly suppressed. That's fair, she said quietly. I testified against a powerful man in Atlanta, someone who was stealing from children's programs. He walked free, and 2 weeks later, someone broke into my apartment. They left a message. Said witnesses don't live long. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking vulnerable. So I ran. I've been looking over my shoulder for 3 years, waiting for him to find me. Sang-won felt ice run through his veins. What's his name? Why? Because no one threatens someone under my protection. Give me his name, Geraldine. She studied him for a long moment. Marcus Hale. He runs half the school board in Atlanta. Connected to judges, politicians. Untouchable. No one is untouchable. Sang-won moved to his desk, pulling out a secure phone. By tomorrow morning, Marcus Hale will have much bigger problems than you. Problems that will occupy him for the rest of his life. You have my word. Sang-won, I'm not asking you to... I know, but you're asking for honesty, and here's mine. I protect what's mine. And those boys upstairs? They need you, which means you're mine to protect now, whether you like it or not. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meanings neither was ready to examine too closely. Okay, Geraldine said softly. Then we have a deal. I stay. I raise the boys. We're honest with each other. But Sang-won? Yes? If you ever throw me out again without listening to my side first, if you ever accuse me of something without evidence, if you ever treat me as less than I am, I will take those boys and disappear so thoroughly you'll never find us. Do you understand? It should have been a threat. Should have triggered his instincts to dominate, to control. But instead, Sang-won felt something close to relief. Because this woman standing in his study at dawn, exhausted and furious and utterly unafraid of him, was exactly the kind of person his sons needed. Exactly the kind of person he needed. I understand, he said. It won't happen again. You have my word. Good. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. The Jade Phoenix you accused me of stealing, where is it now? I have it. It's been in my family for 4 generations. Sell it. He stared at her. What? Sell it. Donate the money to a children's charity in Atlanta. Or Seoul. I don't care. But I never want to see that thing again. Every time I look at it, I'll remember the worst 3 days of my life. So get rid of it. Without waiting for a response, she walked out. Sangwon looked at the jade phoenix sitting in its display case, a priceless heirloom his grandfather had killed to obtain, worth millions, irreplaceable. He picked up the phone and called his estate manager. The jade phoenix in my study. I want it sold by end of business today. All proceeds go to child welfare organizations, split between Seoul and Atlanta. Sir, that piece is worth. I know what it's worth. Sell it anyway. After the call, Sangwon sat in his study as the sun rose over Seoul. Somewhere in the house, Geraldine was probably climbing into bed, exhausted. The boys were sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. His empire was intact, his enemies kept at bay, but everything had changed. For the first time in his adult life, Sangwon Kim understood what it meant to be truly humbled. Not by an enemy, not by a business failure, but by a woman who'd looked at him with clear eyes and demanded he be better than the man he'd allowed himself to become. He would be better. He had to be, because losing her again wasn't an option. 3 months passed before Sangwon realized he'd fallen in love with Geraldine Cromer. 3 months of watching her rebuild what he'd broken. 3 months of seeing her at the breakfast table, laughing at Jiho's terrible jokes. 3 months of overhearing her sing while she helped Minho with his reading. 3 months of small moments that accumulated into something massive. The realization hit him on a Tuesday afternoon. He'd come home early, a rarity, and found Geraldine in the garden with the boys. They were planting vegetables, getting dirt under their fingernails, completely absorbed in the simple joy of making things grow. The late afternoon sun hit Geraldine's face just right, illuminating the smile she wore as Minho proudly showed her a worm he'd found. She was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt stained with soil. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked nothing like the polished women Sangwon had dated in the past. Nothing like Hee-sun with her designer clothes and calculated elegance. She looked real. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with artifice and everything to do with genuine happiness. And Sangwon thought, I want to see this every day for the rest of my life. The thought terrified him. Love was a liability in his world. It gave enemies leverage. His late wife had proven that though her death hadn't been an enemy's work, the grief had nearly destroyed him. He'd sworn after she died that he'd never let anyone that close again. But here was Geraldine, close in ways he hadn't even realized. She knew his sons better than he did. She knew his schedule, his habits, the way he took his coffee at 5 a.m. She'd started joining him for those early morning cups, sitting in comfortable silence before the boys woke up. Those moments had become his favorite part of the day. Daddy! Jiho spotted him, waving dirt-covered hands. Come look, we're growing tomatoes. Sangwon found himself walking toward them, shedding his jacket, rolling up his sleeves. Geraldine glanced up, surprised. You're home early. Meeting ended sooner than expected. He knelt beside Minho. What are we planting? For the next hour, Sangwon did something he couldn't remember doing in years. He played. Actually played with his sons, got dirt under his expensive watch, laughed when Jiho accidentally flung soil at his face, and through it all, Geraldine watched with an expression he couldn't quite read. After the boys ran inside to wash up for dinner, she stayed in the garden. Sangwon stayed too. You're good with them, she said softly. I forget sometimes, when you're locked in your study dealing with whatever it is you deal with. But you're a good father, Sangwon. I'm trying to be better. I can see that. She pulled off her gardening gloves. The boys have noticed too. Jiho told me yesterday that you've been home for dinner every night this week. He said it's the best thing that's happened since I came back. The words created a warmth in Sangwon's chest that had nothing to do with the sun. You coming back was the best thing that's happened to all of us. Geraldine met his eyes. Are we going to talk about it? About what? About whatever this is. She gestured between them. The early morning coffee. The way you've been looking at me. The fact that you rearranged your entire schedule to be home more. We said we'd be honest with each other, Sangwon. So be honest now. His throat went dry. This was it, the moment where he could retreat behind his walls or step forward into uncertain territory. Every instinct screamed at him to protect himself, to keep this professional, but he'd promised honesty. I care about you, he said. The words felt clumsy, inadequate. I care about you in a way that has nothing to do with the boys or the house or any practical consideration, and I don't know what to do with that. Geraldine was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you know why I really came back that morning at the port? For the boys. For the boys, yes, but also, she took a breath. Also because somewhere in the past 3 years, this stopped being a job. You stopped being just my employer. And when you threw me out, it didn't just hurt because of the boys. It hurt because I'd started to imagine a life here. A real life. With all of you. Sungwon's heart was hammering. Past tense? You'd started to imagine? Present tense, she corrected softly. I'm still imagining it, even though I know I shouldn't. Even though it's complicated and messy and probably a terrible idea. He moved closer, carefully, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She didn't. Why is it a terrible idea? Because you're you. Because I'm me. Because we come from completely different worlds. Because your life is dangerous in ways I'm still learning to understand. Because, her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Because I've already lost so much, Sangwon. I don't know if I can survive losing you too. Then don't lose me. The words came out rougher than he intended. Stay. Not as the nanny. Not as the help. Stay as, whatever this could become. And what could this become? I don't know. I've never been good at this. My marriage was arranged, practical. My late wife and I respected each other, cared for each other, but we never had this. He gestured helplessly at the space between them, at the electric tension that had been building for months. I don't have the words for what I'm feeling, but I know I don't want to ignore it anymore. Geraldine's eyes were bright. The boys would need to come first. Always. They already do. And I won't be kept secret, Sungwon. I won't be the woman you hide away while you maintain appearances. If we do this, whatever this is, people will know. Your business associates, your family, everyone. I won't be ashamed of caring about you. Good, because I'm not ashamed either. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the garden. Somewhere inside, the boys were laughing. The house felt alive again, full of warmth and light and possibility. Sangwon reached out slowly, giving Geraldine every chance to pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek, dirty from the garden but impossibly soft. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly. This is a terrible idea, she murmured. Probably. We're going to complicate everything. Definitely. The boys will be thrilled. They've been asking me when I'm going to marry you since about 2 weeks after you came back. Geraldine's eyes flew open. They what? Sangwon smiled a real smile. Not the calculated ones he used in business. Minho wants to know if you'll still make him pancakes when you're his official mama. Jiho has informed me that I need to give you a ring bigger than a cookie. Sangwon, we haven't even... I know. I'm not proposing. Not yet. I'm just telling you that those boys see what I'm only now understanding. You belong here. You've always belonged here. I was just too stubborn to admit it. A tear slid down Geraldine's cheek. She brushed it away quickly. I'm scared. Me too. What if we mess this up? Then we'll figure it out, together. He paused. I need you to understand something, Geraldine. My world is dark. There are parts of my life that will always exist in shadows. I've done things. His voice caught. I've done things that would horrify you. I'm not a good man. Maybe not by some definitions, she said slowly. But you're trying to be better. You're showing your sons that making mistakes doesn't define you how you respond to them does. You're human, Sangwon. Flawed and complicated and sometimes infuriating. But you're also capable of change, of growth. That's what matters. You see the best in people. It's one of the things He stopped himself. One of the things you what? The words were there, pressing against his ribs, demanding release. But they were too big, too soon. Instead, he said, one of the things I admire most about you. She smiled, seeing right through him. Coward. Give me time. I'm not going anywhere. They stood there as dusk fell, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating between them. Inside, Mrs. Park called that dinner was ready. The boys would come looking for them soon. But for this moment, in the garden they'd planted together, surrounded by the promise of things that would grow, Sangwon and Geraldine let themselves imagine a future neither had dared to hope for. It started with honesty, with vulnerability, with two broken people finding wholeness in each other. and though neither said it aloud, they both understood. This was the beginning of something that would change everything. The first threat came 6 months later, delivered in an envelope marked with a red seal. Sang-won found it on his desk one morning, no indication of how it had gotten past his security. Inside was a single photograph. Geraldine at the market with the boys, taken from a distance. On the back, written in neat Korean characters, the lion's new weakness. His blood ran cold. He called an emergency meeting with his inner circle. Kim Tae-young, his second in command, studied the photograph with a grim expression. The Park faction, Tae-young said. They've been quiet since the territory dispute last year, but they're regrouping. This is a message. They know about her. Then we increase security. Triple it. She doesn't leave the house without a full detail. Boss, with respect, caging her isn't the answer. She's not the kind of woman who'll accept being a prisoner. Sang-won knew this. God, he knew this. Geraldine had already expressed frustration with his overprotectiveness. The guards he'd assigned to follow the boys to school, the armored car he insisted they use, the restrictions on where she could go alone. But this was different. This was an active threat. He found her in the boys' room, helping Ji-ho with homework while Min-ho practiced piano. The domestic scene, so normal, so perfect, made his chest ache. This was what he'd built. This fragile, beautiful thing that enemies could shatter in seconds. Boys, go wash up for dinner, Geraldine said, glancing up at Sang-won's expression. She'd learned to read him over the months, knew when something was wrong. After the children left, she closed the door. What happened? He showed her the photograph. Her face went pale, but her voice stayed steady. So it's starting. This doesn't change anything. We'll handle it. How? By locking me in the house? By making the boys afraid to leave their room? She shook her head. I knew what I was signing up for, Sang-won. Knew that being with you meant danger. But we can't let them win by making us live in fear. They threatened you, Geraldine, you and the boys. And if you respond by turning this house into a fortress, you're giving them exactly what they want, proof that I'm your weakness. She moved closer, her hand finding his. I trust you to keep us safe. But you have to trust me too. Trust that I can handle this. I can't lose you. The words came out raw, unfiltered. I can't, Geraldine. If something happened to you because of me, then we fight smarter, not harder. Her eyes were fierce. You've been in this world your whole life. You know how to navigate it. Teach me. Make me less of a target by making me more aware. Over the next weeks, Sang-won did exactly that. He taught Geraldine the reality of his world, not to frighten her, but to prepare her. She learned which of his associates could be trusted, and which required careful handling. She learned to recognize the signs of surveillance, to vary her routes, to always have an exit strategy. The boys noticed the changes. Of course they did. Why do we have more guards? Ji-ho asked one evening at dinner. Sang-won exchanged a look with Geraldine. They'd agreed on honesty, but how much truth did you give 7-year-olds? Because Daddy has a job that sometimes makes people upset, Geraldine said carefully. And when people get upset, they sometimes do things that aren't safe. So we're being extra careful right now. But you're protected. Always. Are you protected, Mama Gi? Minho's question was innocent, but it carried weight. The boys had started calling her that naturally after she'd come back. Not Geraldine. Not Miss Cromer. Just Mama G. And every time they said it, something in Sang-won's chest expanded. Your father makes sure I'm protected, she assured him. We're all safe. But 2 weeks later, safe became a relative term. Geraldine was at the boys' school for a parent-teacher conference. One of the few public outings Sang-won had reluctantly agreed to, with guards positioned discreetly around the building. The meeting went fine. She was heading to the car when she noticed something odd. Her regular driver wasn't there. Instead, a different man stood by an identical black car, wearing the right uniform, holding the door open professionally. Every instinct Geraldine had developed over the past months screamed wrong. I need to make a call first, she said casually, pulling out her phone. The driver's smile didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Kim is on a tight schedule. Mr. Kim insists you return home immediately. She wasn't Mrs. Kim. They weren't married yet, though the engagement ring on her finger suggested it was coming, and Sang-won never referred to her schedule as tight. He would have said important appointment or mentioned the boys specifically. 1 moment, she repeated, stepping back. The driver moved fast, too fast. His hand went to his jacket. Geraldine didn't think. She ran, straight toward the school, toward cameras and witnesses. Behind her, she heard shouting. The real security team emerged from their positions, guns drawn. The fake driver was on the ground in seconds, subdued. Sang-won arrived within minutes, his face a mask of controlled fury. He checked Geraldine over with shaking hands, looking for injuries that didn't exist. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I'm okay. I remembered what you taught me. Trust my instincts. Verify everything. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, because you prepared me." She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "This is our life," Sang-won. "This is what being with you means. And I'm still here. I'm still choosing this." That night, after the boys were asleep, they sat in his study. Sang-won poured them both whiskey Geraldine rarely drank, but tonight she needed it. "The Park faction is more aggressive than I thought," he said. "They're not just sending messages anymore. They're taking action. So what do we do? I handle it. My way, which means," his eyes were dark, dangerous, "which means I end this. Permanently. They threatened you, Geraldine. They crossed a line." She understood what he meant. Understood that handling it in his world had consequences she'd rather not imagine. But she also understood that this was who he was. The dragon tattoo on his neck wasn't decoration, it was a warning. "Do what you need to do," she said quietly. "But promise me something. Anything. Don't become the monster to fight the monsters. Don't lose yourself in this. The boys need you. I need you. Not the lion of soul. Just Sang-won." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I'm trying to be both. The man who protects his family and the man who deserves them. You already deserve them." "Do I? I've killed people, Geraldine. Not in self-defense. Not always because they deserved it. I've made decisions that haunt me. How do I reconcile that with being their father? With being worthy of you? By being honest about it. By teaching them that people are complicated, that wrong choices don't define us forever, what we do next does." She pulled back to look at him. "I see you, Sang-won. All of you. The parts you're proud of and the parts you wish you could bury. And I'm choosing you anyway. So stop waiting for me to realize you're not perfect. I already know. Why do you stay? Because you're trying. Because you love those boys with everything in you. Because when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I've never experienced." She paused. "And because I love you. Even though it's terrifying. Even though it's complicated. I love you." The words hung between them, finally spoken, finally real. Sang-won's control shattered. He kissed her with all the desperation of a man who'd been holding back for too long, and she kissed him back with equal intensity. The whiskey glasses fell forgotten. The danger outside ceased to exist. There was only this. Two people finding each other in the darkness, choosing connection over safety, love over fear. Later, wrapped in his arms on the study sofa, Geraldine whispered, "Whatever happens with the Park faction, we face it together. No more protecting me by shutting me out." "Together," he agreed. "But Geraldine, I need you to know what I'm about to do to end this threat. It's not going to be clean. It's not going to be something I can fully explain to the boys. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared to trust that you'll do what's necessary to keep us safe. The details are yours to carry. I won't ask you to burden the boys or me with them." It was a compromise. A recognition that some darkness would always exist at the edges of their life together. But in the center, where the boys laughed and planted gardens and called her Mama Gee, there was light. They could live in both truths. They had to. Because 2 weeks later, the Park faction was dismantled. Thoroughly. Efficiently. In ways that made the Seoul underworld remember why crossing the lion was a fatal mistake. Sang-won came home late that night, exhaustion carved into his features. Geraldine was waiting in his study, and she didn't ask questions. Just pulled him down beside her and held him while he let himself be human. "It's done," he said finally. "I know. The threat is gone. I know." She stroked his hair. "Come to bed. The boys want to take you to the park tomorrow. Minho has a new robot to show you. Geraldine?" "Thank you. For staying. For not being afraid of what I am." "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Every day, I'm a little afraid. But I'm more afraid of a life without you. So I stay." They stayed, both of them. Choosing each other again and again, through danger and peace, through darkness and light, and slowly, the house stopped being a fortress. It became something better. It became home. The proposal came on a random Thursday. No grand gesture. No elaborate planning. Just Sang-won, Geraldine, and the twins in the garden where they'd planted tomatoes a year ago. Those plants were thriving now, heavy with red fruit. Mama Ji, Jiho said, pulling something from his pocket. Daddy said we should give you this. It was a ring box. Not velvet, something handmade, clearly crafted by small hands with more enthusiasm than skill. Inside sat a ring that absolutely was not handmade. A deep blue sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds, understated but breathtaking. Geraldine's breath caught. Minho bounced excitedly. Daddy said blue like your favorite color, and he said we could be there when he asked. Sang-won knelt in the dirt, not caring about his expensive pants. The boys were very insistent they be part of this. I hope that's okay. You're asking me to marry you in the garden? Her voice was shaking. I'm asking you to marry us. All three of us. Because that's what this is. He gestured to the boys. We're a package deal. We come with bedtime stories and vegetables that need weeding and homework that makes no sense. We come with danger I wish we didn't have, and a past I can't change. But we also come with love. So much love that sometimes I don't know what to do with it. Tears were streaming down Geraldine's face now. You're supposed to ask a question. Will you marry me? Sang-won asked. Will you be their mother legally, officially, in every way that matters? Will you stay, knowing what our life is, knowing what it might become? Yes. The word was immediate, certain. Yes to all of it. The boys whooped, launching themselves at her. Sang-won slipped the ring on her finger, and for a moment, everything was perfect, complete. But perfection in their world never lasted. 3 months before the wedding, Sang-won was contacted by a rival organization. The Yakuza wanted to form an alliance, a merger that would make his operation the most powerful in East Asia. The catch: they required he live in Tokyo for 5 years to oversee the integration. 5 years. The boys would go from 8 to 13. They'd miss their entire elementary school experience in Seoul. They'd miss the garden, the house, everything familiar. And Geraldine would have to choose: leave the life she'd built in Korea, or stay and split their family apart. Sang-won brought the proposal to her late one night. It's a massive opportunity, he admitted. It would secure our future, the boys' future. But it means uprooting everything. Geraldine sat across from him in the study, the sapphire ring catching the light. 5 years in Tokyo, new schools, new language, starting over. I can say no. The organization will survive without this merger. Will it? Sang-won, be honest. What happens if you turn this down? His silence was answer enough. Rejecting this alliance meant insulting the Yakuza, meant potential conflict down the line, meant vulnerability. What do the boys think? Geraldine asked. I haven't told them yet. I wanted to talk to you first. She stood, moving to the window that overlooked the garden. The tomato plants were dormant now, winter having claimed them, but spring would come, and they'd grow again. That was the nature of things, cycles of death and rebirth. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Something I've been afraid to say because I didn't want to influence your decision. What is it? I'm pregnant. The world stopped. Sang-won was beside her in an instant, his hands shaking as they moved to her still flat stomach. How long? 8 weeks. I found out last month, but I was waiting for the right time to tell you. She turned to face him. Now this opportunity comes, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what's right for all of us. A baby, Sang-won breathed. We're having a baby. We are. But, Sang-won, I can't ask you to turn down this opportunity because of me. Because of us. That's not fair. Fair? He laughed, but it was edged with something that sounded like tears. Geraldine, you just told me I'm going to be a father again. You think I care about fair? I care about the boys, about their future, about keeping them safe. She placed her hands over his. If this merger makes that more likely, then we go to Tokyo. We adapt. We build a life there the way we built one here. You'd really do that? Leave Korea? I've left everything before. Atlanta. My family. I rebuilt from nothing once I can do it again. As long as we're together. Sang-won pulled her close, overwhelmed. I don't deserve you. Stop saying that. You deserve love and happiness as much as anyone. She paused. But I need something from you. A promise. Anything. Promise me that once the 5 years are done, once the organization is stable, you'll start to step back. Not completely, I know you can't just walk away, but delegate. Let others handle the dangerous parts. Be more father and less lion. Her hand moved to her stomach. I want our children to know you. Not just the legend, the man. I promise. They told the boys the next morning. About Tokyo, about the baby, about the changes coming. Jiho's response was immediate. Will they have anime there? Minho's was more serious. Will Mama Gi still be Mama Gi in Tokyo? Always, Geraldine assured him. Geography doesn't change family. The move happened in the spring. They left the Seoul estate with its gardens and memories, packed their lives into boxes, and started over in a house overlooking Tokyo Bay. The boys adapted faster than expected. Children were resilient that way. They made friends, learned Japanese, discovered a love for sushi that made Sangwon laugh. The pregnancy progressed. A girl, they learned. Jiho and Minho were ecstatic at the prospect of a sister. 5 months into the Tokyo transition, Geraldine woke to find Sangwon missing from their bed. She found him on the balcony, staring at the city lights, his face troubled. What's wrong? I'm terrified, he admitted, of being a father again. The boys I had you to help me when they were young, but a baby from the start? What if I mess this up? Geraldine moved beside him, her swollen belly pressing against his side. You won't mess it up, and even if you make mistakes, we'll figure it out together. That's what we do. I've been thinking about your promise. About stepping back from the organization. He turned to face her. I want to do more than step back, Geraldine. I want to leave, completely, Sangwon. Not immediately. I need to finish the integration, establish stability, maybe another 3 years. But after that? He placed his hand on her stomach. I want to be present. Really present. I want to take the boys to school. Teach our daughter to ride a bike. Grow old with you without constantly looking over my shoulder for the next threat. What would you do instead? I don't know yet. Something legitimate. Maybe investment, advisory work. I have enough money that we'd never have to worry. He paused. I want a normal life, Geraldine, or as normal as we can have. Is that even possible for someone like me? I think people can change, she said slowly. I think if you want it badly enough, and you're willing to do the work, you can build something new. But Sangwon leaving that world, it's not going to be easy. There will be people who won't want you to walk away. Then I'll deal with them. But I'm done sacrificing our family for power. Done choosing danger over peace. The boys deserve better. You deserve better. And this little girl, his hand moved gently over the curve of Geraldine's stomach. She deserves to know her father without all the darkness. The baby kicked, as if in agreement. 3 years later, true to his word, Sangwon Kim began his exit from the criminal empire he'd built. It wasn't clean. It wasn't easy, but he'd learned something from Geraldine. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to change, even when change feels impossible. He sold his interests, transferred leadership, made arrangements that would keep his family secure. Some former associates were angry. Some tried to prevent his departure. But the Lion of Seoul had one last roar in him, a clear message that anyone who threatened his family would face consequences more terrifying than anything they'd seen before. Then he walked away, not into some dramatic sunset, but into something better. Ordinary life. Jiho and Minho were 12 now, navigating the complexities of adolescence with the help of 2 parents who actually showed up. Little Yuna was 3, a force of nature who'd inherited her father's intensity and her mother's kindness. The family had returned to Korea, but not to the old estate. They bought a smaller house, still nice, but not a fortress. A place where neighbors waved and kids played in the street. Sangwon discovered he was good at legitimate business. His strategic mind, once used for territory disputes, now navigated investment portfolios. His ability to read people made him an excellent consultant for companies trying to expand into Asian markets. He was home for dinner every night. He coached Minho's soccer team. He helped Jiho with homework. He carried Yuna on his shoulders through the park, letting her pull his hair and demand stories about dragons. Geraldine finished her doctorate online, started a consulting practice for international families navigating cross-cultural child development. She wrote articles, gave talks, built something that was entirely hers while still being present for their children. They were happy. Not perfectly, no family is, but genuinely, deeply happy. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Sang-won and Geraldine stood in their backyard garden smaller than the Seoul estates, but theirs. The tomato plants were thriving again. "Do you regret it?" Geraldine asked. "Leaving that life?" Sang-won looked at the house, where he could see the kids through the window. Ji-ho teaching Yuna how to build with blocks. Min-ho doing homework at the kitchen table. Normal. Beautiful. His. "I regret the years I wasted thinking power mattered more than this," he said. "But leaving? Never. You gave me something I didn't know I could have a real family, a real life. I'd choose this over an empire every single time, even when Yuna colors on your important documents. Especially then," he smiled, "though we should probably hide those better." As the sun set, painting their garden in gold, Geraldine thought about the girl she'd been when she first arrived in Korea. Running from her past, terrified and alone, she'd come looking for a job and found a purpose, found a family, found love in the last place she'd expected. "You know what I realized?" she said. "What's that?" "Home isn't a place. It's not Seoul or Tokyo or Atlanta. It's this wherever we are, as long as we're together. That's home." Sang-won pulled her close, the sapphire ring on her finger catching the dying light. "Then I've been home since the day you walked into my house and decided 2 broken boys and their damaged father were worth saving. You weren't damaged. You were grieving. There's a difference. You saved us anyway." "No," Geraldine corrected gently. "We saved each other." Inside, Yuna called for them. She'd found a butterfly in the garden and wanted them to see before it flew away. They went together, hands linked, toward the laughter and light of their home. The Lion of Seoul had finally found peace, not by conquering, not by dominating, but by surrendering to the one thing he'd spent his life avoiding, love. And in the end, that was the most powerful choice of all. The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is choosing to be vulnerable, to love fully, to let others in despite every instinct that tells us to protect ourselves. Because when we open our hearts to connection truly, deeply, without reservation, we discover that being seen is more powerful than being feared, and home is not a place we find, but a feeling we create with the people brave enough to stand beside us through the darkness and call it light. If this story touched your heart, drop A in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose between the life you knew and the life you wanted, share your story below. I'd love to hear how you found your way home.